it's Michael Caputo. Thanks a lot for tuning into Still Standing. I do these videos once a week, mostly, and I put them up there with Still Standing, my podcast, at stillstandingpodcast.com. It's been a big week, another big week. I think every week is big with President Donald Trump, at least in politics. I'm, one thing after the other this week. It's amazing. They're talking about Ivanka and Jared's clearances, all kinds of things. One after the other, Paul Manafort's sentencing. And of course, the House Judiciary Committee restart of the Russia collusion delusion investigation. I did a bit of this on my podcast, but I taped my podcast just as Paul Manafort's sentencing hearing was going on, and so I put in there about how I was hopeful that the judge would be merciful to Paul and sentence him like any other financial crimes, not as, financial crimes being committed by somebody who was in the spotlight because of a misguided investigation as to whether or not Trump's campaign colluded with the Russian Federation in some way. Of course, we didn't. It never happened. And the investigation report, which we are expecting out of the Mueller team any time, will find no collusion. But importantly, the judge in the case actually stated that Paul Manafort was being charged for financial crimes, that he found no collusion in this case. He was not being charged at all for colluding with Russia or anything at all to do with Russia. I thought that was important. But more importantly was the fact that the judge sentenced him to just under 4 years. That was the kind of mercy I was looking for. I was really praying for. I know Paul for 30 years. We're not great friends, but he was my boss on the Trump campaign. I worked for him off and on for, many times over the years. I like him very much. I consider him a friend. We're not drinking buddies or dining buddies, but him and his wife Kathy and his family I have a lot of high regard for. I enjoy working for him. I enjoyed working for him on the Trump campaign. I was disappointed in, the crimes that he was being punished for, but they're real crimes. They're financial crimes. And as he said when he spoke in the courtroom, he's humiliated by these whole proceedings. I was so pleased to see that the judge, sentenced him even a little bit more than your average white-collar criminal would be sentenced for these kinds of financial crimes, tax evasion and foreign bank accounts, etc. But less than 4 years, that's pretty good considering the prosecution, the Mueller team wanted like 19 to 26 years. 19 to 26 years for financial crimes. An absolutely horrendous recommendation out of the Mueller team. But frankly, I saw this 47 months sentence out of the Alexandria court as a repudiation of the Office of Special Counsel and the way that they've been beating the living tar out of Paul Manafort. I mean, honest to God, 9 months in solitary, or at least most of it in solitary. That's outrageous. They've really driven Paul Manafort into the ground, his health, and I'm sure he's, his well-being, his mental health has suffered. I mean, I couldn't imagine being in solitary confinement for 9 months. That's outrageous. But, while those are real crimes, and I believe the 47 months was probably even a little more than your average white-collar criminal would have gotten for the same crimes, I'm really not liking what I'm hearing from the pundits on national television. While you saw, as well as I did, the shock and awe on their faces as the 47 months was announced. It was almost like Donald Trump had won election again, all over again. I saw the faces of people, one after the other, on television, so disappointed that Paul Manafort wasn't basically given a death sentence or life in prison sentence. One after the other, all these left-wing journalists and complicit media, resistance media, all so disappointed that Paul Manafort wasn't sentenced more heavily. But I'm also not liking... By the way, I saw a congressman before I went on Anderson Cooper last night, a congressman, a Democrat, was on just before I was last night on Anderson Cooper, and he actually said that he was hoping that Judge Jackson, who in D.C. will sentence Paul on other crimes, they expect no more than like 10 years, but he was hoping that Judge Jackson would make up for it when she sentenced Paul next week. Make up for the 4-year sentence or 47-month sentence that he got in Alexandria. That congressman actually said very clearly, very plainly, that he wanted Judge Jackson to take into consideration the fact that Paul got a comparably light sentence across the river. That's just outrageous, completely stupid. And of course, it was very interesting because one of the panelists on before me said, a Republican said, I can't believe I just heard that congressman say that. And Anderson, luckily, still had that Democrat congressman on set, called him back on. It was great live TV. And the congressman said, of course I didn't say that. But if you rewinded the tape, if you looked at this recording, you saw him absolutely call for Judge Jackson to sentence Manafort more harshly because across the river in Alexandria, Virginia, he got what the congressman thought was too light of a sentence. That speaks volumes about these Democrats. It really does. But I'm also really not liking what I'm seeing and hearing in the past day that somehow Paul's a bad guy because he was working for clients in the past like Jonas Savimbi and Angola. And I guess I remember in the Philippines, he worked for the dictator there, what was his name? Oh, gosh. It escapes my mind right now. And they, these were all people, all regimes that were supported by the American government. And they were supported by the American government during Ronald Reagan's time when he was working for them, during the previous government of Jimmy Carter. Each one of these people were supported. Savimbi was fighting communists in Angola, just as we were supporting rather unpalatable leaders across the globe who were fighting communism. These were insurgencies that were not in the best interest of the United States, not in the best interest of the people in those countries. And Paul Manafort was working for leaders who were being supported by the United States government. This is like mindless revision of history, if you ask me. These people don't even remember the brutality of communism. Probably back in the day of Savimbi and the others, now back in Paul Manafort's clients of the 80s and the 90s, they probably were apologetic for communism, and they're trying to revise history today. I've been objective in my sentiment of Paul's getting punished for real crimes. I've been objective for Paul about Paul's crimes and his sentence. But I praise Paul for standing up for anti-communist leaders who were allied with the United States during his career. I absolutely praise it. I know about these times because I myself was supporting anti-communist leaders across the world. I mean, I had served in the United States Army Infantry during the Cold War. At times, I served on the DMZ in South Korea, staring across the border with North Korea. I was stationed elsewhere, but I was there for war games. Serving in the Army in the Cold War meant that you had to be ready to, go to battle with, communist insurgencies or communists or even the Soviet Union. When you signed up for the Army during the Cold War, our enemy was communism. I was proud to serve in the United States military, and I worked in favor of the Reagan doctrine during the time that Paul Manafort was working for Savimbi and others. I helped the Nicaraguan Contras. I worked in favor of other governments that were allied with the United States, like El Salvador and others. I'm proud of my time in working in support of the United States government's position overseas. Just like Paul should be proud of the time he spent, lobbying for and helping folks that we were supporting as the United States of America. I don't like the fact that these folks are out there saying, oh, Paul Manafort supported brutal dictators. Paul Manafort supported the allies of the United States, period. If you didn't like it, too bad. I guess you were supporting the other side. I don't like this revisionist history. It really makes me angry to see these hateful, hysterical liberals with no sense of history attack people who stood on the side of the United States, stood on the side of freedom in a very dangerous time when most of them wouldn't have ever seen a uniform of the United States military. They stood by the Soviet Union and their proxies, in fact. And now they're trying to revise history, like Paul Manafort was in some way or another working against the interests of the United States. He wasn't. He was working lockstep in the interests of the United States. And even when he worked in Ukraine, he was trying to push President Yanukovych of Ukraine toward the European Union and away from the Russian Federation. That's a fact. And that gets lost in all of this. Sure, Paul Manafort worked for some unsavory characters, but we, as the United States, were in alliance with those people. So, okay, I love the fact that he got a light sentence. I think still it was a little heavy compared to others who committed those crimes, who weren't under the spotlight of the bogus Russia collusion investigation. But I'm glad to watch these liberals, these leftists, head explode on television. I'll never forget it. I like the reactions on television, just like I love the reactions to President Trump's victory in November of 2016. Another thing that happened this week, of course, was this House Judiciary Committee Russian collusion investigation got started on Monday. Talked about it on my podcast, which you can hear at stillstandingpodcast.com. I got one of those letters asking for documents. I got probably the shortest list of documents of anyone on the 81. If you looked at people like Donald Trump Jr., he got 4 or 6 pages. It was a huge request, and it's going to cost a lot of money for him to respond. But I only got 3 short paragraphs, and my attorney responded within 24 hours, almost the same day. And we basically responded, I have none of these documents. They were asking me about things like the Trump Tower meeting that I had nothing to do with. During the time of the Trump Tower meeting, I guess that was early January 2016, I was working in Cleveland at the Republican convention. I was in charge of the president's communication office at the convention. I had nothing to do with it. They asked me for, I guess, any communications, any documents that were in regarding to Trump campaign interaction with the Russian government or its intermediaries. Of course, there was none of that, or at least none that I saw. And I didn't have any documents to do with that. Also, the committee asked me for any documents I might have regarding Rick Gates and Paul Manafort's communications with a couple of Russians and a Ukrainian. I have nothing of the sort. I reported to Rick Gates and Paul Manafort, but I have no communications about that. I never heard any conversations between Paul and Rick or anybody else about Russian people or even Ukrainian people. So my attorney responded and said, I have nothing to give. So we were responsive within 24 hours. But what was really wild, though, is that a senior staffer at the committee asked my attorney, he said, will you allow Michael to appear for a testimony in front of the House Judiciary Committee? And my attorney, who's very experienced at this stuff, he was New York State Attorney General Dennis Vacco over at Lippis Mathis in Buffalo. He was also a U.S. Attorney in Western New York. Very experienced. I'm very glad I hired an experienced attorney. He was kind of palms up about it. He was like, why do you want Michael to testify if he has none of the documents that you wanted, and he's already testified twice in Congress and once in front of the Mueller team? What do you need to know? Why do you need to ask him the same questions for a 4th time? He told them that he was not consenting to present me for testimony, and he and I talked afterwards, and we agreed this was the House Judiciary Committee's attempt for a perjury trap. And anybody who tells you that a perjury trap doesn't exist, this is something that doesn't happen, is a liar. That's leftist spin. Anybody who's ever dealt with the federal justice system knows exactly what a perjury trap is. It's when they interview someone who's has committed no crimes and there's no real reason to interview them, asking them the same questions that were asked of them many times, weeks and months and years before, to see if they answer a question differently, even by accident, or to see if they say something that another witness disagrees with. Either way, somebody's going to get accused of perjury, and the idea is you squeeze that person who you allege committed perjury to say something that you need to have said in order to, in this case, impeach the President of the United States. That's what this is about. It's a perjury trap to get one of us in the list of 81 to say something that's not true in order, so that they can impeach the President of the United States. That might work on Michael Cohen, John Lovitz, if you want to know for truth. Michael Cohen will lie about anything. He's a pathological liar. There's no question in my mind. He even lied during his testimony before the House. He probably lied behind closed doors too. The guy can't wake up in the morning without lying. It's a fact. And you see now that he lied about whether or not he asked for a pardon, and there's absolute proof, incontrovertible proof, that he did ask for a pardon. This guy is a liar. You know, if they want somebody else on that list of 81 to act like Michael Cohen, good luck. But it's not going to be me. And I'll tell you what, I'm not going to stand up in front of yet another congressional committee to be asked yet again the same questions so that they can compare my answers to something I said 2 years ago. Remember, George Papadopoulos was put in jail for not committing perjury, but a 1001 violation, which means he lied, in fact, to the FBI, not Congress. It's the same thing. They got him on misremembering a date. A date. So they can do the same thing to me or anybody else who testified 2 years ago about occurrences that were 3+ years ago, and then they ask the same question and you misremember or you misstate. You know, I've told the truth all along the way. I voluntarily testified 3 different times. And if I stood before Congress one more time, I'd tell the truth again. But I am absolutely unwilling to do so. Why? 2 reasons. Number 1, I don't want to be caught in a perjury trap. I have a very good attorney. Dennis Vacco made sure I didn't get caught in the previous perjury trap that was set for me by the Mueller team. That's because he's an expert at this stuff. And when Dennis Vacco says to me, watch out, the House Judiciary Committee is going to try and do the same thing, I'm listening. I don't want to be caught up in a perjury trap, not because I don't tell the truth, but because I might say something that somehow, in a small way, disagrees with something I said 2 years ago. Secondly, this stuff is expensive. Really expensive. I paid over $200,000 in legal fees so far for 3 hearings and more, interactions with the United States government, whether it was the Congress, House or Senate or Mueller. My attorneys have had to travel to Washington without me to have discussions with these teams. Not just me, they travel. And let me tell you something, when you're hiring a good attorney, it costs money. Now listen, I hear you leftists out there on Twitter who say, if you tell the truth, you don't need an attorney. You're naive. In fact, you're a fool. And here's the reason why. First of all, you need an attorney in any way you deal with any kind of legal entity. And by the way, in this kind of a situation, you definitely need a really good attorney, someone who specializes in government white-collar stuff. That's why I hired Dennis. He's expensive. You would ask why a witness needs to bring in an attorney like Dennis, who is New York State Attorney General. I'm not going in there with a divorce attorney or my cousin the attorney or my best buddy who does real estate law. I'm not doing it. I'm going in there with somebody who knows exactly what they're doing because I know what these people are about. In fact, I tweeted today and I really believe it. Well, maybe I don't believe it's a joke, but I tweeted today that I advised any Republican who goes to lunch with a Washington Democrat better take an attorney because the Democrats are on a tear. Anything they do is a trap for Republicans, and it's definitely a trap over at the House Judiciary Committee for every one of these 81 people. Now, we've also heard that Chairman Nadler of New York City intends to actually send out more document production letters. That means what? Over 100 people are going to be asked for documents in an investigation that the Mueller team could not find any Russian collusion. Here's the deal. I don't like the Mueller team. I don't like their tactics, what they're doing to Roger Stone, but you have never seen a more impressive array of investigatory talent in the United States, at least in modern times, in recent memory. I don't like these guys, but these FBI agents and the young prosecutors and older prosecutors that they have on this team, they're sharp as hell, and they know what they're doing. And if they can't find Russian collusion, it doesn't exist. And if you think Representative Jerry Nadler and his team is going to find something that this crack squad of investigators couldn't find, you're smoking something. Absolutely. There is no collusion. Jerry Nadler's not looking for collusion. He's setting perjury traps because he wants to impeach the President of the United States. It's a fact. An absolute fact. Now, here's the thing. People say, when I say I'm not going, here's what I mean. And by the way, this could change if the Nadler committee, talks to my attorney and says, well, we actually want to talk to him about things that he hasn't spoken about before. They're not going to do that. But, they're not going to let Dennis fence him in on stuff. So if they invite me, we're going to refuse. If they decide to subpoena me, I'll have to go. I mean, you can't not go. I might have simply said I'm not going. But here's the thing. If they subpoena me, I got to honor the subpoena. And I'll go in and I'll take the fifth. Now, I may be the only one among the 81 who's talking like this, but I know everybody among that group of 81 is thinking like this. Somebody's got to stand up to these people. Somebody's got to stand up to these people. This bogus Russia collusion, delusion. It all has to end. I'm not willing to spend more of my money on this. And I don't care if Jerry Nadler thinks I should spend more money. I'm not going to do it. I'll spend enough money to go in there and take the fifth. And I'll do it on camera if you want to. If you want me to, Jerry. Absolutely. Bring it. I'm right here. That's the way it goes. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to sit there and endure a fourth round of questioning on this because I know what you're up to. America knows what you're up to. That's for damn sure. So I'm not afraid of it. Doesn't matter to me. I'm going to adhere to the letter of the law. I will invoke my constitutional rights as an American. And as a father and a husband, I'm telling you this. Our lives, the Caputo family, our lives have been on pause for 2 years because of this bullshit. We have not been able to do anything. I've lost my businesses. I've lost everything. My family has suffered through this because the Democrats lost a presidential election. Because your queen couldn't defeat Donald Trump. The bogus Russia collusion, delusion, this whole investigation, you're going to wear it in 2020. And if you keep going on this bogus collusion investigation in the House Judiciary Committee, you're going to overstep. You already have. And you're going to pay the price in 2020. Guarantee it. I hope you lose control of the House. Enjoy your 2 years, Jerry. Enjoy it. All you staff members of the House Judiciary Committee, I'll be polite. I'll honor whatever you want to do. But you know what's going to happen in the end. I'll take the fifth, people, because I have constitutional rights. I have a family to protect. I've testified 3 times already. You bring me in for a 4th time, I'm not doing it. You're going to get the 5th. And here's another thing. If you want answers to your questions, why don't you go down the hall to House Intelligence and take a look at my testimony? Or can't you guys share? Well, anyway, tough week for a lot of people. Good week for America. I'm glad Paul Manafort got a light sentence. Still a pretty tough one, but I'm hoping he can withstand it. I'm glad that the investigation got a punch in the nose from that judge in Alexandria. Thank God. I hope the judge next week, Judge Jackson in D.C., sees fit to show Paul some mercy. And I'll tell you what, this whole bit about the Judiciary Committee, I've got to go on Anderson Cooper again tonight. I'm going on Fox and CNN and MSNBC next week. And I'm going to say the same thing. Maybe somebody else among the 81 will join me in this. But somebody's got to stand up, and it might as well be me. Why not? This is Still Standing, my podcast, stillstandingpodcast.com. Thanks a lot for watching. I appreciate it. I'm still new at this stuff, but it's good practice to do it every week, and I appreciate your time. Stillstandingpodcast.com.